Welcome, foolish mortals. Today on the Disney Newsreel, Disneyland is expecting to reach historical highs in attendance in the year 2022. Disney's Blizzard Beach at Walt Disney World has started selling tickets for their reopening, and Disneyland Paris now has a reopening date for when they are going to be allowed to open in the near future. All that and more coming up on today's episode of the Disney Newsreel. Alright, so today we're going to start out by talking about Disneyland a little bit. Disneyland is expected to reach historical attendance levels by 2022 due to pent-up demand. And this, to me this doesn't really seem like news. This is something that I kind of expected. People haven't been able to go back to Disneyland it's been almost a year now. It's 28th at 2 o'clock in the morning as I'm recording this. And so the park at Disneyland California has been closed for, I think it's going to be a year in March. I believe March is when both Disneyland and Disney World closed down. So it's been almost a year, an entire year, and this is the longest that any Disney park has been closed. So I can't say that I'm surprised. I would have been more surprised if Disney came out and said that they were expecting attendance to be very low in 2022 for Disneyland. Just because everybody's still really upset about not being able to go. They still want to go, and everyone's still chomping at the bit to be able to go to Disneyland. So this is really not news. So yeah, they are expecting their attendance to skyrocket. It does help that, or it will help that in the latter half of this year, at the very least, they are planning for Walt Disney World to be able to expand its capacity to 70% capacity. Right now they're at 35% capacity. So they're thinking that by the latter half of the year, they will be able to bump that up. They will be able to essentially double that and be able to bump that up to a 70% capacity. If all goes well, yeah. We have a vaccine. If we can start to get everything slowed down, then sure, maybe we can expand it to 70% capacity. That would be lovely, because that would mean that we would not need to change anything about our trip. And which, there should be a video up here within the next, probably the next week, a little less maybe, that will tell you all about that. So yeah, they're expecting Disneyland to essentially be slammed for the entirety of 2022, probably the latter half of 2021 as well. I would be surprised if they weren't. Alright, next is Disney's Blizzard Beach Water Park. Tickets now available ahead of their March 7th reopening. So Blizzard Beach was always intended to reopen around March 7th, but they have now started to put tickets for March 7th and beyond on sale for Blizzard Beach. And they have also released, and it doesn't show it in this article, but they have also released new mask requirements and things like that, whether face covering is going to be required in the water parks and where they're going to be required, things like that. They have released that as well, putting that alongside their announcement that tickets will now be on sale. So that will be a good thing. And I think Blizzard Beach was just closed for refurbishment, but I think it didn't help that we had the pandemic going on. So I don't know. We'll have to see how they handle having a water park, how they handle any sort of face covering rules, if they have any face covering rules, because I don't really know how that would work. So, alright, next we are going to jump across the pond, as it were, and we're going to head over to Japan. So Tokyo Disney Resort reveals attraction refurbishment calendar through August of 2021. So I actually really like that Tokyo Disneyland does this, is that they will actually go at the beginning of the year, they will actually sit down and go, okay, when are we going to refurbish each of these rides? When are we going to close them down so that we can refurbish them? And how long are they going to be closed, and everything like that. And then they actually put that list out to the general public so that the general public can see and say, oh, hey, Haunted Mansion is going to be closed for refurbishment from, on these couple of weeks. So You know, maybe people could avoid going to the park if that's something they wanted to do. You know, things like that. And I really think that the Disney parks here in the U.S. could take a page out of Tokyo's book. So like I said, they actually put out the whole list. There's Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek is closed right now. It closed on January 7th and it's going to be closed through April 11th. I don't know exactly what they're doing in there that's going to take that long, but it's going to be closed for a while. Pooh's Honey Hunt will be closed from April 13th through the 19th. Pirates of the Caribbean is going to be closed from May 20th or 10th through the 21st, rather. Mark Twain's Riverboat is going to be unavailable from May 24th through June 4th. Pinocchio's Daring Journey is going to be closed June 8th through the 14th. Peter Pan's Flight, June 15th to 24th. Mickey's PhilharMagic, June 25th to the 30th. Enchanted Tiki Room, Stitch presents Aloha e Como Mai, July 15th or 10th through the 15th. Small World, July 20th through the 29th, and Haunted Mansion, August 21st through the 30th. And they also have a similar list for Tokyo Disney Sea. I won't read that whole list out, but like, I just wanted you to see, like, they plan this out through the entirety of the rest of the year. They don't just all of a sudden go, oh, this ride's going to close for refurbishment starting, you know, tomorrow, and it won't be open again for, you know, essentially, like, a lot of times what happens with Disney World and Disneyland, I've noticed it at Disney World especially because I pay more attention to Florida, is that they'll go, oh, we're going to close down this ride for refurbishment starting tomorrow. So they give you no warning. All of a sudden it's just like, hey, we're going to close this down tomorrow. You know, maybe they give you like a week in advance. And so a lot of times things like that will close on people while people are there on a trip. And like, you know, that's their favorite ride and they wanted to be able to ride it. And they get there one day before it closes. And it's just a little frustrating. But then they also have a tendency to then be like, whenever anybody asks them, like, oh, okay, well, how long is it going to be closed? When is it going to reopen? And they never really give an answer. Essentially, their answer is, well, it opens when it opens. And to me, that's just a little, it's not a little, it's very frustrating. Because, you know, when you're going to Disney World, you like to plan your trips out. You want to be able to go, okay, we're going to go to this park this day, this park this day, this park this day, and while we're in this park, we want to try to ride this, and this ride, and try to eat at this restaurant. Like, when you're going to Disney World, you like to plan your days out like that, so that you have at least a overarching structure, even if you don't have all of the specifics that you're going to do in between those big kind of bullet points, as it were. And when there's any sort of refurbishment like that, you really can't do that because you don't know when that ride's going to reopen. So if you're trying to plan a Disney trip for, like, a surprise Disney trip for your child or your siblings or your spouse or whatever, and you know that, like in the case of Anna, I know that her favorite ride is Expedition Everest. If they were to shut down Expedition Everest to work on the Yeti or something like that, and they didn't know when it was going to be reopened, and they gave us no inkling of, you know, any sort of timeline, but I wanted to surprise her with a trip and just randomly be like, hey, we're going to Disney at the, you know, in like a month or something like that. I would want to know whether or not Everest was going to be open so that she could ride her favorite ride. And I wouldn't be able to do that because they never actually give a reopening date. They just kind of expect us to wait until it opens, which is a little frustrating. And so seeing Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea doing this, seeing that the Oriental Land Company has the forethought to go, people are going to want to know when these are going to be closed and how long they're going to be closed. That's also a Japanese thing. They are very, like, you plan things out ahead of time. They're very work ethic oriented. And so I'm not surprised that they do it like this, but I really wish that every Disney park would do it like this, just because it is really nice information to have, you know, because I would want to know that the Disney Sea Electric Railway is going to be closed from January 6th through February 10th, so for almost a month, or that, let's see here, Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster is going to be closed from August 6th through October 18th. I would want to know that. If those were rides that I wanted to do, I would want to know that. especially if it was like, me and Anna traveling over to Tokyo so that we could go to Tokyo Disneyland. That's something that I would want to know ahead of time, because if it's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to go on, I think Tokyo has Haunted Mansion. It's not Mystic Manor. It's Mystic Manor in China. But if it was like, oh, the Haunted Mansion at Tokyo Disneyland is going to be closed while we're there, I would postpone our trip, quite honestly, because I want to ride Haunted Mansion there. So, it'd just be nice if the US parks did that. Next, Disneyland Paris will implement standby pass upon reopening. So Disneyland Paris has, at least at this point, it hasn't changed. Things could change by the time this date comes up. But Disneyland Paris is now scheduled to reopen on April 2nd of 2021. So in a couple of months now. And then back in October, they had rolled out a standby pass to minimize the wait times and to be able to ensure physical distancing. And they have come out and announced that when they reopen in April, they will be re-implementing the standby passes. Again, as a means to try to control physical distancing and things like that. But my big takeaway from this is Disneyland Paris is, at least as of right now, is planning to reopen. So that's good, because, some of the fires around the world are starting to be put out at least a little bit, enough that some of these places can start to reopen and people can start to not necessarily go back to normal lives, but get towards that. Nothing is ever going to be the same again, but we can start to get back towards a sense of normalcy and eventually maybe not have to wear masks everywhere we go and things like that. So yeah, that's my big takeaway from this, is that Disneyland Paris is opening in April 2nd. So if any of you are wanting to go to Disneyland Paris, which I don't know if we can right now, would be nice, then that's when you'll start to be able to do that. Or at least start to be able to book your hopeful trips. All right, and then we had breaking news from just a couple of days ago, which is that Disney to update Jungle Cruise at Walt Disney World and Disneyland Resort with a new story, cultural sensitivity changes coming. So, I'm not surprised about this. After the whole Splash Mountain thing, I am not surprised at all that Disney is making this choice to close down Jungle Cruise and redo the story. I don't know when they'll close it down, but as of right now, they are working. And I think it was beforehand. They have already been working on the story, or a new story for the Jungle Cruise. And there was another kind of news article that came out because people were wondering if then they were going to change the ride to include some of the characters from the movie rather than the story that it has. Apparently that is not the case. It is still going to be different than the movie that they're going to put out. But they're going to take out some of the culturally insensitive matter, the tribal, the depictions of tribal people of the Amazon that they had in there. They had I think 2 different instances of those, and then I think they're taking out the head hunter. I think is probably going to go. But I think those were really the only 3 instances that could be considered culturally insensitive. But at the very least, they're going to take those out, and they're going to rework the story so that they can put something new in there. And maybe they'll redo some of the animatronics. Maybe they'll add some new things besides just doing a new story. That would actually be kind of nice, because I love Jungle Cruise, I do, but it could use a refresh. It really, really could. It has definitely aged. And Walt never intended for everything to just stay stagnant. He never intended for the Jungle Cruise to remain pretty much exactly the same the entire time. So, but this is just the latest in a slew of sensitivity changes on Disney attractions. And Splash Mountain wasn't even the first one. They had also changed Pirates of the Caribbean. Before that, they had changed the red-headed wench, as she was, that was selling women to the pirates. They changed her to just essentially a barmaid, it seemed like, or a barkeeper, that was trying to sell rum to the pirates as a feminism sensitivity thing. which was fine. And that didn't require a huge amount of changes. Like Splash Mountain is going to have to be totally redone, and Jungle Cruise has a few changes that are going to have to happen. But Pirates, they literally just had to take Red is her name. They had to take Red, and they essentially, I think, changed her outfit a little bit. And they gave her a bottle of rum in her hand, and they changed the lines that she says. So now she's talking about buying the pirates buying rum. So Jungle Cruise is just the latest in a series of cultural sensitivity changes that have gone on at the parks. Which, again, all of these rides and everything were products of the time. They're products of, 1955 when Disneyland opened and 1971 when Walt Disney World opened. All of these rides were opened at that time. And so they really are products of the times. Because back in those days, it wasn't necessarily seen as an issue. I mean, it was really still an issue, but people at the time didn't see it that way, or at least not the vast majority of people. And it's just now coming to the forefront that these things need to be changed to be more sensitive to the cultures that they're trying to depict. So, I don't know if there's anything. Maybe Anna and I'll have to sit down and have a discussion sometime and try to think if there's any other culturally insensitive things in the Disney rides that might come up to the chopping block next and have to be changed. I don't know. But if you are hoping to ride the Jungle Cruise before it closes, I would head down to Disney World now, because I don't know when they're going to close it. I don't know if they'll wait till after the 50th or if they'll close it beforehand. Same with Splash Mountain. I just don't know. There really is no telling. So, anyway, that's everything I have for today. So thank you all for joining me this week, and I hope that I will see you all again next week. But until then, don't forget to thank the Phoenicians.